Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's me, and today we're going to talk about real estate investing. It is one of my most favorite forms of investing, and I'm going to break down the strategies that you can use to get into this field. Now, before we get into that, I just want to say thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing to the page. It means the absolute world to me. I want to help as many people as I possibly can communicate some of the most complex topics in the simplest ways possible to help people get started on their real estate journey. Whether it's buying their first house, whether it's buying their 100th house, I want to help people own, acquire, invest in real estate. That's what I'm here for. So we're here to educate, empower, and execute, and we want you to do the same. So thank you guys again from the bottom of my heart. I love you guys, and stay tuned. When it comes to real estate investing, there are three main exit strategies. That is buy and hold, fix and flip, and wholesale. So I'm going to break down each and every one of those, and I'm going to tell you the when and the whys of each property that you look at and how the exit strategy should play out. So for the first one, we're going to talk about buy and hold. When it comes to buy and hold, you have to look at the property as a whole. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you about one of the number one criteria that I and many investors like me and that I know hold true to their heart, and it's the 1% rule. The 1% rule says this: a property should rent for at least 1% of the purchase price. What that means is if you buy a $200,000 property, it should rent for a minimum of $2,000. If it doesn't, it is not a good property for this specific strategy. So, for example, let's say you buy a $200,000 house and you don't have to do any repairs, it's completely turnkey. That house should rent for at least $2,000. The reason why that's important is because at 1%, the home should cash flow. So using the 1% rule, if you were to buy a property for $200,000 today with an 8.5% interest rate, you would pay around $1,500 a month in mortgage. So following the 1% rule, your tenants would be paying you $2,000 a month, meaning you would cash flow around $500 for that property. That's why the 1% rule is so important. The farther away, smaller the percentages of the purchase price, the harder it is to cash flow the property and the more risk that goes into the deal. That's why it's important to know your numbers, especially with the buy and hold. You always want to look at the property as a whole. So let's do the same scenario, but let's say the property has some repairs. So you buy a $200,000 property, it needs $50,000 worth of repairs. That property should rent for $2,500 a month. The reason why that's important is because you're all in at $250 and you still want to follow the 1% rule so you can cover back whatever loans you took and the property itself can still cash flow. On to the next, let's talk fix and flip. When it comes to fix and flip properties, the criteria for it is a little different just because the 1% rule isn't really the standard in which you should measure if you're going to do a fix and flip. So when it comes to fix and flipping, criteria is the ARV. You want to make sure whatever you sell it at top dollar, right, is going to be more than what you paid for in rehab, acquisition, and holding costs. So I'm going to break each of those down. So your rehab cost is what it's going to cost you to fix the house up. Your acquisition cost is what it costs you to buy the house. And your holding cost is what it costs you to hold the house for however many months, years, etc. that you had to before the house was ready to be sold. Let's say you bought a house for $200,000 and the ARV in that area sits around $300,000. You can make $100,000 off the sale of this home if it's in good condition. So that $200,000 property you bought was not in the best condition and it's going to need about $50,000 worth of repairs. So it's going to cost you $250, you're all in at right now, $250. But you had to hold it for 3 months. Let's say you're paying a loan that's going to be about $3,000 a month. So all in, you're at $259. Now that's not counting any taxes, etc. There's a lot of more specific numbers that go into it. I'm just giving you a general gist. Okay, so at $259, you're all in. When you sell that property for $300,000, if it sells at that mark, you are going to make about $41,000 of profit. That sounds pretty great, especially if you're doing it one every single quarter at that type of profit. Things people don't talk about are the what ifs for fixing and flipping. So the what ifs are huge. The market could change, which could leave you getting less money on your walkaway or more, right? So there's a positive and a negative to it. The home could be in worse condition than you imagined. The home could not be up to code for whatever reason. So there's a lot of different things that go into fixing and flipping that requires more oversight, because things come up and you have to adjust and be adaptable and be flexible to all these different situations. So like I said, general gist, you'll make $41,000. Fixing and flipping is really, really good for getting a lot of capital really quickly. Fixing and flipping is, I don't want to say it's more or less complicated, but I do want to say it takes a lot of oversight from you, the investor, to make sure that this deal is actually going to be profitable in the end. Because you could buy a $200,000 house, hold it for a year, and then sell it for $300,000, which is a great win, except it costs you an additional $80,000, $90,000 just to get you from point A to point B, meaning you profit $10K and it took you 12 months plus. Huge loss. So that's the risk with fixing and flipping. When it comes to wholesaling, you're essentially not making money off the house itself, but the paperwork. So there's something called an assignment fee that exists in wholesaling that's usually paid by the buyer of the home. So here's how the process works. You pick up the phone as a wholesaler with a list full of motivated sellers. You call and attempt to get a house under contract. You then take said contract and said property and you go, hey, Mr. Investors or Mrs. Investors, come look at this property I have under contract. And if you like it, I'd happily sell it to you at a discounted rate. Usually houses in this neighborhood go for around $300,000 to $350,000. I'm selling it today to you for $210,000. So there's a really good profit margin for the investors. The investors will then come, they check out the property, they go, man, this is a really good deal. Sure, we'll do it. You are going to give the investors the contract via assignment of contract for $210,000. They sign the contract, assignment of contract. You get paid your $10,000. The seller gets paid $200,000. Now that's like a really simple, pretty breakdown of it, but there's actually a lot of little intricacies that go into that deal in general, such as dealing with the seller itself. A lot of times when you're getting a really good deal, it's deeply discounted, you are going to have sellers who are not necessarily so ecstatic to cooperate with you because they're already doing something for you. So with that being said, you have to make sure that the seller still wants to stay in the deal. You have to make sure that you're disclosing that information to the seller, that you are not going to be the end buyer if you want to stay, on the morally up and up. I believe in telling the truth and being radically transparent, because a lot of people can sense when you're not quite operating in the way that benefits them and is being honest. So that's the full breakdown of the 3 exit strategies when it comes to real estate. There's more, of course, but these 3 are my favorites, and they're the most common ones. So we have buy and hold, fix and flip, and wholesale. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Remember, we're here to educate, empower, and execute, and we want you to do the same. So thank you guys for all the love. Again, please like, subscribe, and share. We want to help as many people as possible, and we can't do it without you. Much love.